are whipsawing all over the place. I think the culture is changing on this issue as we speak. In Virginia, I think we just went up to 47-43 on gay marriage, which was 2 weeks ago. Astonishing changes. What I sense happening, and I just got I have 5 lessons or ideas here, and these aren't by any means, I don't think that I have the final answer on any of them, but they are meant to sort of think through the next stages here. There's a lot of behavioral science now that is on political campaigns. This is what people are doing, which shows that you tend to be most effective when you're advocating somebody on something, whether it's a get out the vote script and you're trying to get somebody to come out and vote. It is not effective when you tell somebody, you're trying to make 100 calls an hour and you're like, tomorrow's election, did you know that can promise you're gonna have to vote? Boom. The research shows that has zero effect on getting out the vote. What does have an effect is when you say, do you know where your polling place is? You wait for them to answer. When are you planning on voting? You wait for them to answer. Do you need to ride to the polls? Because it forces them to think through what they're doing. And I think that partly what happens with LGBT issues is when you can force or ask your opponent to think through the life and the experience of your average LGBT community member, it breaks down the barriers and it forces them to put themselves in that person's shoes, which is a radically different thing when you're looking at, we all know what the community is like, but when you're looking at it from somebody who doesn't want to know, doesn't know, isn't willing to think about this mysterious other life, and there's a lot of fear and loathing that goes into LGBT issues for people who aren't involved in it. So if you can somehow get them to walk through, and I think that one of the most valuable, if you look at this astonishing lawsuit where Ted Olson, a very conservative jurist, is suing to overturn Prop 8, I think it was Prop 8 in California. What they're doing is they're saying the grounds for it is that it's actually better public policy because stable same-sex couples are more congenial to family values than, because they're stable family, they contribute, they stay together, they're good tax base. It's a totally different way of thinking about it than for your average, conservative, hostile person whose images come from, all due respect, having gone to graduate school at Berkeley, to Castro, and these are very valid, enthusiastic parts of the nationwide gay community. But when you ask and you walk somebody through the life of a stable, like most of us know, the LGBT couples we know, they're just kind of taking care of their cats and watching movies and going to dinner and making dinner. I mean, they're just like the rest of us. They're just like the rest of us. And so when they want to adopt a kid, they want to adopt a kid to raise them in a stable house where you make dinner and you rent videos and you take care of the cats, right? So I think that doing that, but that requires a different way of going about it. Another thing, I think a lot of the research has shown that when you talk about shared values rather than weighted language, it advances. So fairness and discrimination tend to get the ball further down the field than freedom. Ironically enough, I mean, we all do believe in freedom, but when you say we need to be fair to all parties, it's shown that when you're talking about economic issues, economic fairness actually communicates a lot better to people than benefits or whatever. And nobody wants to be for discrimination. They don't like how that feels. A third thing is what I talked about before, Virginia values. This is a business-friendly, genteel, civil state. That is the nature of our political discourse. And I think that there's actually a pretty good unused, untapped resource just talking about civility. Tim Kaine right now, watch my words. Next year, a lot of his campaign is going to be about civility. And it's interesting. I've talked to him, I've seen him speak now a few times. Very interesting. And he's a very smart political leader. He's a very valuable national leader. I think there's something about that contrasted against George Allen, contrasted against a lot of these Bob Marshall or Ken Cuccinelli, these people. I just find it un-Virginian. I find it uncivil, the way they talk about members of this family. You can have policy disagreements, but not in a way that is disrespectful to anybody, I think, or that makes them feel unwelcome.
So how can we convince Tim Kaine to stop saying marriage is between a man and a woman. And I've told him, I've asked him about that. I've told him his statements hurt me and my partner.
Yeah.
His statement hurts children of gay families.
Yeah.
And he keeps saying it, or keeps hiding how he's saying it.
I think the best, I'm going to give you, I think the best thing that can happen is for those, this is a very political answer, a very substantive question, but I think that as those numbers start going up, and the numbers represent something much bigger, the numbers represent cultural sentiment. So I think that for a Catholic who came up in when Virginia was more backward than it is now, I think that for leaders like him, that it makes it easier for them to feel as if they're not. It's not a very satisfying answer.
It isn't satisfying.
But I think, but that's my honest answer to you, is that as the culture changes, I think that that's going to make it easier for somebody like Governor Kaine to follow the culture.
The numbers are so important.
And
this is the, I was gonna talk about.
They're interested in.
And it's interesting, the research, there's a study about Catholics now. The majority of Catholics now favor.
Yeah. So what's going into changing the culture is probably the most important thing that's happening right now. Probably more important than legal challenges. And this was what happened with civil rights. I mean, a lot. In law school at UVA, I helped a professor named Michael Klarman on a book on Jim Crow, where the biggest progress that happened with Jim Crow was when Bull Connor turned the water hoses on. I mean, we were stuck. There was no progress happening in desegregation at all across the South until the rest of the country backlashed against those very severe, and then the culture changed very, very dramatically in about a year because those images were so horrible. So I know it's not a...
Yeah, I've just been very disappointed with some of our Democrats.
Yeah.
Including the mayor of Richmond, who also keeps saying marriage is between a man and a woman. So
Yeah.
Judd, I took Tim when I belonged to MCC at least 15 years ago. I took him to a church service there with me. And I could see, and he was not well known, he was still on city council, he wasn't even the mayor yet. But you could see where he was going. And I could see how moved he was by that experience. He saw those couples go to communion as couples. It touched him deeply as a Christian. But he's campaigning. He's running for office. He's after votes. In his heart, I know Tim is not a bigot, but I do know that he's campaigning, and it is Virginia. It's full of Baptists.
Would you allow me just to say one thing? The vision for Mothers and Others was a vision that I had, that we would get crowds out, because it's the numbers. And if they could see how many of us think this way, and none of us seem to have that answer as to how you get the numbers out. People will sign petitions, and they'll send letters, and not everybody, but to actually see people come out like they come out for the meetings, where they're talking about the bills, and the family foundation come out at the last minute and fill the room, while Roland is probably the only one there, maybe with Robin or you or somebody. We have to do a better job, because actually one of the delegates from the General Assembly told Roland, and I should have let Roland tell this on his own, but he said, I'm on the fence about whatever the bill was at the time. He said, but look at the halls, they're full of the side that's opposing you. If you could get a crowd out here while I'm on the fence and I see, and he came out and said it, we know it. So we need to do better as far as that's concerned. I wish I had the answer.
And these are not mutually exclusive. There can be a longer term effort on civil unions and marriage in Virginia, but like what Equality Virginia, I think that working on discrimination and bullying and partner benefits are very, very smart, because on that suite of issues, people can put themselves into the minds of these other people. So the hospital visitation, the bullying of kids, I mean, these are things where an average parent can sort of think through, and that's why I think it's so smart that that's the front that we're all working on in the short term, while having the longer term challenges in mind. So those are the final thing is this, and I have sign-up sheets here if anybody would like to put these on. So this just means you'll get our emails and some of the updates about the stories we do. I think these stories are very important, you know, and I think that to the extent, because the story puts your mind on somebody's experience, and it's not a bunch of general abstract stuff that you can dismiss because it's abstract and it's a bunch of words. A story is about a person is about an experience. And so that's what we're trying to do with this, and that's what I'm most interested in doing. It's all about people. So that's my comments. But I'm going to turn it over. Okay, thank you very much for having me.